D, I almost had sex with him.
You almost had sex with who?
Christian.
What?
Yo, look, are you bitches blind or something? Your man Christian is a cake boy.
A what?
He's a disco dancing, Oscar Wilde reading, Streisand ticket holding friend of Dorothy, know what I'm saying?
No way.
He's gay.
Not even.
Yes, even.
He does like to shop share, and the boy can dress.
Welcome everyone to the Granite Mountain Movie Club. We had this one came together really quick, but I'm excited about it. I was going to be talking about something else tonight, but the timing didn't work out for everyone who's going to be involved, and started talking to some of my regular contributors about what we might want to do, and degree studies threw out the idea of talking about Clueless because his friend Arturo, who's with us today,
Hello.
had recently been watching it. So we're like, well, let's just do Clueless. And I was down for that because I remember liking Clueless from back in the day. So here we are. I got degree studies here, and first time guest Arturo. I think it's Arturo D. Leal. I think you're a locked account, so I don't know if you want followers, but I can put your link in the bio or something, or a link in the description.
Followers are good. They can request and be screened. So that would be fine. But I'm also, I do it for the love of the game, really.
Yeah. And
like many Latin men, Arturo is withholding. So if you want his love, you have to submit an application.
No comment.
Yeah. And I first I think I'd probably seen your account around, but the two of you did a recording recently on, and I might botch is it Alan Bloom?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys were discussing one of his books. I think it's The Closing of the American Mind. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm glad we've said it so many times recently that you can remember.
Yeah, and I've never read it, and I didn't know anything about Alan Bloom, but your guys' conversation was really interesting. And Bloom was clearly had a lot to say that I retroactively agree with. So that's a really good conversation. I'll link to it here. You guys should go listen to it. Mm-hmm. If you're like me, especially, and didn't know anything about Alan Bloom.
Yeah, and so we released that first episode, and probably in the next week or two, the first episode discusses the first section of the book, and then we'll release a subsequent episode that'll talk about the second half of the book. So
yeah, and it seems like Bloom was really ahead of the curve in kind of like diagnosing a lot of what was going on, or what's going on now.
Yeah, some people refer to it as like one of the first shots fired in the culture war. I don't know if that's true, like genealogically or in its characterization of the book, but certainly it is like a really, really prescient book. And so, yeah, if you're like a terminally online person who's sort of interested in, American culture and how we got to be the peculiar way we are, I think it's an essential book, and hopefully Arturo and I's conversation adds something to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that you noted that he was ahead of the curve, and he was really so far ahead of the curve that a lot of the more dense philosophical insights that he's made, still haven't penetrated the culture. So maybe listening to our podcast will help bring about the world that Bloom hoped to see.
Yeah. What would now Bloom is deceased, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What would he? Well, because what was his lifetime? I'm kind of curious if he might have seen the movie Clueless, 1995, and what you think he might have thought about it.
He died in 92.
Oh, he never saw Clueless.
No, he didn't. He didn't make it to Clueless. He became famous in 87, and he only got a few years of. But you know what they say. It's not the years in life; it's a life in the years.
He probably, I don't know how long this movie was in production, but he might have consulted on the character of Christian. But go ahead, Arturo. What were you going to say? Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that I kind of feel like he would have dug it, He was
absolutely.
The movie came together pretty quick, actually. It sounded like, from from what I was reading, I think in like '93 they were working on a TV show. The what's her name? Amy Heckerling, I think.
Yeah.
She had done Fast Times. She directed it and I think wrote it as well. And so about '93, she was writing this TV show, and the TV version didn't really work out, but they quickly adapted it to be a movie, and that became Clueless, and that was out by summer '95. So I think it only was start from conception to movie was 2 years or less.
Yeah, Fast Times. It was written by Cameron Crowe, who kind of famously wrote
Oh,
he wrote the
yeah.
book where he sat in at a high school, and then they turned that into a screenplay and a movie. And so for Clueless, Heckerling, she sat in on classes at Beverly Hills High School to get a feel. And I feel like we were talking about how some of the slang is maybe not 100% realistic, or didn't actually, maybe no one actually used, maybe it was too clever. But I do think that this movie does reflect a lot of how teens actually were, like, I guess because of the care that she put into attempting to, I don't know, experience the actual thing.
Yeah, and she was hanging out at Beverly Hills High, which is an outlier in terms of high schools, I guess. It's like the children of many of in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, I know Arturo will know this guy, but there's sort of like a marginal right-wing writer. I don't even know if he considers himself right-wing, but Mickey Kaus went to Beverly Hills High and talks about it a lot. But yeah, there are like a million sort of people in the milieu who went there or had some experience there.
I recognize this guy from Twitter, but yeah, I don't really know him too well.
Yeah,
I don't know his work.
Consider me not shocked to know that he went there.
Yeah, he's sort of one of those guys that like he was alt-right before there was an alt-right, and then but like because it was just him, he was still invited to dinner parties and friends with Ann Coulter, and then once the actual alt-right came around, he sort of lost his nerve.
Yeah, well, he was a member of the tribe, so I can see that some of the more coarse elements of the alt-right might have turned him off. But Beverly Hills High, I didn't realize it's the school from It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know if you're familiar with the scene in the film where it's like a high school dance and Jimmy Stewart.
Oh yeah, the pool opens up.
Yeah, the pool opens up. It's that school. Yeah. So.
Oh wow,
truly,
that's amazing.
Truly a relic, a relic of American cinema, a classic state. But I don't know. Did they film this there? I don't think that they did.
I don't think it's filmed there. It's yeah, it's kind of the inspiration of it though for it.
Spiritually, it was filmed there, even though really it was apparently filmed at Ulysses S. Grant High School in Valley Glen.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Sarah Jessica Parker went to Hollywood High. Lawrence Fishburne, Frank Darabont. That's the Shawshank guy, directed Shawshank. Anyway, there's a bunch. I would want to hear briefly like what your guys' history with the movie is. Arturo, you are a bit younger, I think, so I'm curious if you when you first saw this.
I don't know if it's an artifact of my age, because there's a lot of movies that are old that I had like from before the year 2001 that I have seen, but I never actually got around to seeing this one until 2021 when I watched it. Just one night, I was like, I'm gonna finally get around to it, and I was a huge fan. I thought it was amazing. I thought it hung the moon. And then a couple weeks ago, I saw it for the second time. So I've seen it a couple times, as an adult. I didn't really have it's not like a movie that I saw a lot in my youth, but I was familiar with the various, I guess, ways in which it's influenced the culture, I may say. Like I knew like the plot beats. I knew that I knew that she gets with her stepbrother. I'd seen, I guess, GIFs or whatever, but it wasn't something that was like a relic of my adolescence, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think it came to HBO Max or something. Is that how you ended up seeing it?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Yeah. For me, I think it's one of those things where I probably saw it within a year or so of it coming out. I would have been pretty young, but it was popular. It did really well, and I had older sisters, so
Nice.
We, I would have seen it probably on VHS at some point. Um, and yeah, like my whole life, my whole teen life and stuff has a lot of the phrases from the movie have just been in the air, like they've always been there. So it's like the quotes and stuff have kind of been in the background always, the references and stuff. But I don't know if I had any really significant early experience. And watching it basically yesterday was probably the first time I've seen it in at least 20 years, and it's probably since the early 2000s since I've seen it. But it was good to revisit it.
Yeah, I know that my sort of history with it is, I was, I guess, granted, if we're the same age, when it came out, we were like pre-teen, so it wasn't really marketed to us. But I remember my impression of the movie from like the ads being that it was like a silly girl movie, and then I slowly became aware that it was a movie that like film people liked. And I was like, oh, that's
Yeah,
weird. Like, is this a serious movie? And then actually, the first time I really watched it was I had some high school class where we read Emma, the Jane Austen book that is the basis for the Clueless plot, and then we watched Clueless. And I remember being like, oh man, yeah, this is sort of a profound movie, and it's one of those movies that I lost. There's some movies you love that you sort of keep in the rotation every couple of years. Clueless, I hadn't watched in many years, but I remember loving it. So when I watched it this week in preparation for the pod, my main thought was like, will this still hold up? And I found it. I still found it like a triumph. I really, really like this movie, and I think I don't want to like get to a head or sort of like direct the conversation myself. But I think one thing I remember loving about this movie as a teenager, and that really stuck with me again now, is like I can't think of another movie that simultaneously presents high schoolers in like in a rich enough way that it's accurate, like they're selfish and they're horny and they're making mistakes, but also it like doesn't hate teens. A lot of presentations of teens, it's either like the kids themselves are nihilistic, drug fiends, maybe that's sort of like Euphoria, or they're more like American Beauty, where like the kids might have some morality, but like the town and the school or their parents are like these great dark sources of evil. And I think one thing I mean, maybe it's just a form of like privilege or something, but like I really liked my high school experience, and like I had good friends, I had some teachers I really liked, I got along with my mom, and so I feel like that. But even if you have that positive experience, there's things that are very like challenging or just tremendously like impactful about that time in your life. So I think part of why I liked this movie, and Lomez has this bit about how like actually popular people aren't bullies. This is like a new culture subversion, but in the past, the like jock athlete would be seen as like a defender or someone who was nice. And I think that was sort of true at my high school, that like there were very popular people who were also nice and would like give you the time of day, even if you were sort of like socially marginal. And I think the presentation of Cher as like, a little bit of a ditz, but with a lot of depth to her, who decides she sort of wants to play a more positive role in her social environment. I don't know, that rang true to me a little bit. And like the whole, I don't know, it's a very like wistful and nostalgic movie for me, because I did see a lot of like what I remember about high school in it.
yeah. You mentioned the thing about film people appreciating it, and I was surprised on this rewatch that it has some of the same, like, I guess like texture or feel of some indie movies from the period. Like, um, so it's kind of like it's not, it doesn't feel quite like some of the things that came right after it, like 10 Things I Hate About You or She's All That, or things like that. Those feel a little bit more slick. This
Hmm.
feels a little bit has feels to me to have a little bit more of an independent spirit.
Yeah, I think Heckerling was somebody who, and I mean, I'm sure everybody who's ever made a movie has perceived themselves as such, but she definitely seems to be somebody who sees herself as like, like a serious filmmaker, not just kind of a scribe or a director for hire. So even though it's funny that you say that degree that you thought, oh, it's just a silly girl movie, because I do think it is, at heart a silly girl movie, but it's one that can also take itself seriously, and I think that's reflected in the spirit that you identify of it being, not mean or like not. I contrast it with Mean Girls, which I thought is kind of like the next generation version of this. But like in Mean Girls, everybody is a very not okay, not true. It's a lot more cynical and dour of a film, even while being funny. Whereas this really does feel like the people actually like each other, and like how Cher is a nice popular person. There are kind of brief flashes of where you think it might go in a direction where the outcast is made the butt of the joke, and occasionally it does happen, but it really is a very uh, humanist, even we might say, a film, and to its credit, I think it manages to be true to each part of itself, which is why I think it is probably more like an indie film, in that it did kind of have an almost holistic approach to how it wanted to depict the experiences.
Yeah, and on the topic of like, actually jocks are nice thing, um there was, I almost want, it seemed like it was the 80s where the jocks, they started making jocks like the bad guys in movies or something. And I wonder if that's not just like, I don't know, like, I mean, it's like resentment based, right? So
Yeah, I think, sorry to cut in, but I almost wanted to say in my earlier already too long monologue that like one thing that jumped out to me watching this movie is I was like, oh, you can make a teen movie where it's not just you as a nerd like recapitulating your high school social
Hmm.
hostility. And like I
yeah,
actually think looking at Heckerling's filmography, she has like a much more appropriate view of adolescence. Like in Fast Times at Ridgemont High too, like there's this touch of like, well, all the subcultures are interesting and compelling in their own way, and we'll sort of explore them and see the character of kids who go to different. But it's like there's so much more richness available when you take that sort of broad spirited perspective as opposed to writing, like you just said, sort of like nerd revenge stories, which really is, I think, since I don't know what the exact year is, but let's say in the last few decades, that's like the majority of, and some of them aren't particularly mean spirited. Like Superbad is sort of like a nerd triumph movie, but they don't seem to hate the rest of the high school community. They just like want to get laid and they're in their own world, so it's whatever. But a lot of the movies like that are like really hostile, to other social sections of the high school that are not just the frustrated nerd.
Yeah, and I've
yeah,
noticed that a lot of, I mean, the films that are hostile to the non-nerds are the ones that I think have not aged as well, or that we don't like. For instance, like Dazed and Confused is kind of has that similar sort of touching all bases quality to it. It certainly doesn't seem like a, and it was made by a guy who played college baseball, I think. So naturally, it wouldn't be a nerd revenge film. But those I think are the best films, the ones that do seem like they're not vendettas, set to film.
not resentment vehicles. Yeah, yeah, and you also have to wonder how much of it is like, I don't know, like I guess I'll go there, like psychosexual, like these are the like, maybe gay people in Hollywood are like, these are the attractive jocks who would not do sex with me, so I'm
Yeah,
just gonna
yeah.
portray them as bad.
Hmm.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
there's something really perverse in Mean Girls, and like I don't even dislike Mean Girls. I think it's a good movie, but you can almost imagine Mean Girls as sort of like a woman who is ostracized in high school, but then like later at college or in her professional life, finds out she's pretty or something, and she sort of like that movie is like, well, what if I had found this out earlier? You know, like, would I have survived? What that would have meant in high school or something. But yeah, another thing. I mean, I guess Arturo, you basically said this, but one thing that's captured in Dazed and Confused and is definitely captured in this movie that is true to my high school experience was it's like as you progress freshman, sophomore, junior, like the hostility between different social cliques sort of breaks down. And like, especially by the time you're a junior and senior, it's like more people are open to like sort of interclick hanging out, interclick dating. And there's like
Yeah.
more of a feeling of, there's like a broader feeling of camaraderie that develops as like the awareness that you're all going to leave soon comes in. And I think that's like a really, I don't know. I'm going to be a real cornball discussing this movie, but my own experience of that in high school was that it was like a very beautiful thing. So seeing it sort of captured a little bit is nice. And as we've said, a lot of teen movies don't do that so much.
No, yeah, I agree. My high school experience was recent enough that we had Instagram at the time, and I remember like the last few months before graduation, like seeing people like post pictures of them hanging out with other people on Instagram, being like, and we didn't really even have cliques. My school was small enough that we didn't. But I remember being like, wow, I didn't even know those two people ever interacted. You know, that's crazy to see them together. But yeah, you know, in that spirit of kind of that blending coming from an end approaching. I do remember thinking that was very profound, even at the time.
That leads me to something this probably predates Clueless, and maybe it's even in like Fast Times, but maybe it's in Ferris Bueller as well. But there's the scene early in Clueless where she's like walking around giving the groups labels, you know, like like one of them was like the Persian Mafia, and I don't know who else she had, but like that's like a very standard teen movie scene. I'm wondering who started that, if you guys have any idea.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think if I, you know, because I've watched a lot of like, I think some version of it is pretty old because like, well, here's an example. Like Grease, when did Grease come out? Because obviously Grease is
Grease
about
was the 70s. It was 50s nostalgia in the 70s, I think.
78.
right. And there at least obviously like Grease is not like a realist project, but you know, in Grease they are sort of referring to basic cliques. And I think other movies I've seen about the 50s and 60s, I don't know if there were cliques exactly in the way we'd conceive of them, but there were definitely like, oh, you know, those are like the car guys. And like,
Yeah.
nerds are fucking eternal. So like nerds have definitely always existed, even if they weren't,
Yeah.
you know, recognized as like a rights seeking, you know, important element of society. But
A protected class.
yeah. Were you guys surprised by the Persian joke? Like one thing I like about watching this old shit is like, I think I'm always sort of by our culture, like lulled into the, lulled into the idea that like all these social observations are recent. Like it was just sort of startling to me to be like, oh, like in 1995, people already knew that there was like a Persian style in LA and that they were very rich. Whereas
Yeah,
like,
that's a big LA thing, and
yeah,
you know, I think they're big in like textiles, and they make a lot of money, and yeah, I thought that was a nice like shout out to the LA Persian scene.
yeah, absolutely. I just didn't realize it was like a thing to be talked about going back 30 years. I just sort of thought it was more recent than that, but apparently not.
I mean, I guess they're probably a huge. I'm just making stuff up here. You would know better than me, but the Iranian happenings of the 70s and stuff. Probably a lot of the people with money ended up in LA.
Yeah, post Shaw exodus.
Yeah. It had been long enough from 79 for, I guess, everybody to for them to have. I was a little surprised too, but it made sense to me that by, I guess, you know, by then it would have saturated the popular understanding. And also Cher, I think, actually does come off as somebody who would kind of be one of the first people to make that insight, even if other people wouldn't. So I think that was true to her character. Not that it maybe was something that was obvious to everyone, but it did seem in keeping with the character that she would make this kind of very wry observation like that.
Yeah, and they're never seen again in the movie. The Persians are.
Unfriendly Persian hotties.
Well,
and then,
you need a BMW to hang out with them, so.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they all BMWs. The Persian I know the best. He's a Mercedes guy though. So see if he listens to this episode. But then there was the speaking of like Persians, and I know the Kardashians are not Persian, but is the dad is Claire? I mean, they're supposed to be Jewish. Or Cher Horowitz, is her dad supposed to be like? He kind of seemed like Robert Kardashian or Robert Shapiro. Like he seemed based on like those because the OJ trial had just happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he could
yeah.
definitely be like a Sephardic Jew, but it's a funny pairing between him and Cher because obviously like I know you're right. Like there's a weird thing going on where like the subculture they're invoking and certain qualities of Cher's character, it like seems like a whole LA Jewish thing, but they just cast like the most ridiculous actress possible to play such a person, and like the idea that she's his daughter also seems a little ridiculous. But I guess we never see the mom. It could be.
Yeah, and didn't they say the mom died from a plastic surgery accident or something?
Yeah, I believe so.
Or liposuction.
That's kind of morbid and dark, but funny.
Yeah, it's like a weird throwaway joke, but it's like this. I guess supposed to be a joke about Hollywood people. But
yeah, in real life, the guy who plays her dad, he is a Sephardic Jewish man from his family's from Aleppo. Shout out to the guy who ran for president. See, I don't remember his name, just like he didn't remember Aleppo. Anyway, and then Alicia Silverstone
libertarian.
Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
And then she apparently her dad was born to a Jewish family, so she actually does have a Jewish father, which kind of makes it funny that she looks so
Yeah, she's like she's a wasp presenting, but she's a Jewish American princess, I guess.
No, but yeah, I swear I have noticed that in other movies, but this one maybe most prominently, that it does seem like if I was a kid and I didn't know anything about the world, I wouldn't notice it, but like watching it now, it seems obvious that it's Jewish never but the name, kind of like Seinfeld was, right? When you watch Seinfeld, it's obvious that it's informed by that experience, but they don't really talk about it explicitly.
Yeah.
Right.
Good for them though. 95, just being like, yeah, the rich Hollywood lawyer. He's a Jewish guy.
I also really love that relationship over the course of the movie, and it felt to me too like something you don't see. Like there's so many interesting facets to Cher's personality because like at the beginning of the movie, there's always signs of depth, but they're really focusing on her being sort of like selfish and ditzy and ridiculous, but she still is sort of like doting on her dad and making sure that he eats right. And he really wants her to be successful. Like I like the presentation of that relationship.
Oh yeah, she's like comically nurturing, and I think it's one of those things where degree studies, tell me if I'm wrong, but as a man reaches a certain age, that stuff hits different on screen when like
No, yeah, it was just, to me it seemed very sweet. Like it's like I mean, I guess I don't have kids, but like it just seems like the common complaint is just getting your kids to be interested in you at all or like care at all. Like it's very funny. I mean, I guess she was doing it to get close to Josh, but it's very funny that like both his stepson and his biological daughter are like thrilled to highlight these legal briefs because they just like want to be helpful.
Yeah. He is it's funny. Like he a lot of the archetypes of this movie, like he's a stern, pit bull litigator, and she's a extremely popular blonde chick, and even Josh, he's a kind of pretentious d-bag who reads Nietzsche. They could all be like very unpleasant characters, but they all seem nice, not even to each other, but for the most part to the world, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Regarding the dad, real quick, other casting options for him were Jerry Orbach from he's from one of those crime shows, Law and Order. I think you'd
Yeah.
recognize him. He's like the dad in Dirty Dancing. And then Harvey Keitel, which that would have been a different movie, I think.
Might have derailed things a little. I don't know. Maybe I
Yeah.
disagree.
Yeah,
This
he
was around the
walks
time of
in-
Pulp Fiction.
He walks in, sees Josh and Cher kissing, and just kills them both.
The Heckerling specifically said she wanted the dad to be someone who, in another movie, would normally play like a hitman or something.
Well, she certainly seemed to be following that to a T.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, this is very, like, it's all about archetypes and stuff, but I wonder if part of that was that, like, you know, Cher's brilliance is, like, seeing the beauty or what's special in everyone. So, like, it makes a lot of sense that she could have this, you know, pugnacious, sort of physically ugly father that she sort of treats very sweetly.
Yeah. Let's talk about Cher's open borders speech. Well, you guys want to explain for the audience what that was about?
One sec. Well, it's you know, like is it a debate class, or is it like an English class they do
I think
debate?
I think the teacher is supposed to be teaching debate.
Okay, so the debate teacher, the question is, should all oppressed people be allowed refuge in America? You know, Amber, you know, I guess the closest thing the film has to an antagonist, takes the con position and Cher is pro, and of course she hasn't prepared, so she just goes off the cuff. And I'll just read the whole thing actually, so that we can have it on the record. She says, "So okay, like right now, for example, the Haitians, how does she say
Haitians.
the Haitians need to come to America, but some people are all, what about the strain on our resources?" But it's like when I had this garden party for my father's birthday, right? I said RSVP because it was a sit-down dinner, but people came that like it did not RSVP, so I was like totally bugging. I had to haul ass to the kitchen, redistribute the food, squish in extra place settings, but by the end of the day, it was like the more the merrier. And so if the government could get to the kitchen, rearrange some things, we could certainly party with the Haitians. And in conclusion, may I please remind you that it does not say RSVP on the Statue of Liberty. And the class applauds, and then Amber says like, how am I supposed to answer that? That was not like a coherent answer, and she obviously didn't study at all. So I shouldn't have to do it if she didn't have to do it. And I guess he buys that. First of all, I mean, I don't agree with her politically, but it does. I mean, I did think it was a coherent argument, you know, or it was on topic. I would have given her credit for it even if I disagreed. But
yeah, it's a good analogy, and I'll just throw in, you know, this is the Based and Red Pilled Movie podcast, but if every open borders person was a Cher Horowitz, the world would be a better place.
Yeah. Well, I like in her story that she's openly just like, if everyone just accepts lower standards of living, then we can let in as many
Canadians as we want.
Yeah. It was the Matt Iglesias speech. 1 billion.
Yeah, what Amber would have done if she was a trenchant debater is she would have asked for some numbers. She would have been like, okay, 20 people RSVP'd, 5 extra. You still had enough entrees. That means at 30, it would have been totally impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Amber would start getting into cultural IQ numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah. This was the year that Alien Nation by Peter Brimlow came out, so I guess she wouldn't have read it. But if she had, she should have brought up, you know, saying, like, of course you're bringing up the poem on the Statue of Liberty. That's actually not immigration law. I don't know if you know that. You should have stuck that in there.
I'm sure her dad was a Peter Brimelow reader and an uns.com contributor.
Oh yeah, I would like to. We got to get Steve Saylor's take on this LA movie. He loves the LA movies.
Yeah, he definitely would have noted the Persian Jewish thing, or maybe had like a 5-minute digression on the history of Persians in LA or something.
Yeah.
To his credit.
Yeah, he's one of the guests I would love to have on at some point. So I got to get the clout a bit higher before I can get his attention. But,
but with the extending extending, I guess, the conversation about that scene is that then you get the other kids, to give their opinions on it. You've got the one kid, is it, who says, okay, like the way I feel about the Rolling Stones is the way my kids are going to feel about Nine Inch Nails, so I really shouldn't torment my mom anymore, huh? And this teacher's like, well, that's not really on the subject, but tolerance is always a good lesson, even when it comes out of nowhere, which is a funny, and it also, it reflects both of it reflects, I guess, like how Gen Xers acted, and also how you can imagine a liberal teacher would have accepted his answer, as long as it was on the vague topic of tolerance. I don't know. There's a lot of funny lines, but I think that they do reveal something about the character, which is always, good for a film.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, so there's two scenes, if I recall correctly, where Cher has to sort of make like the debate argument, and both times she's like unprepared, but comes up with like a pretty good off the cuff, using analogies argument to make her point. Like, is the function of those scenes just to show us that like she's pretty smart, or maybe they're just there to be funny? But I was sort of wondering, like, why are these in here?
Well, this is something I have in my notes because I feel like that first one with with her mispronouncing Haitian and stuff, it's kind of showing her maybe to be a little dumb, a little smart, but it's kind of played for laughs. But I think about it, and like we see like TikTok stuff of high schoolers now, like this would be like an actual like Ivy League admission essay now, like like this would be no different. Be like, yeah, at our summer party at Martha's Vineyard, Ron DeSantis sent a bunch of extra people this summer, but we gave them Chipotle and admit me to Harvard.
Yeah. Just, I think that the function of it is to show that she is like innately bright, but like kind of a raw talent, if you will. Like she gets things wrong, or obviously isn't. And it's funny that Josh is always making fun of her for being like an airhead and a ditz. And I think it doesn't really come across as, and maybe like he remembers like a younger, brattier version of her, but he's honestly too harsh on her because like she clearly is like a perceptive, for a teenager, she's clearly perceptive and not totally selfish. She does seem to care about the world around her. So maybe I think you could say that this catches her like a moment of where she's in flux, where she's maturing, and surely I think that's the kind of the thematic gist of the movie is showing that she's becoming a woman.
She's out of touch, but she's bright and she's caring.
Yeah.
Well, regarding Josh, does he ever do anything smart? I mean, he acts smart. He's holding books and stuff, but
yeah.
Does he actually ever say anything smart?
I mean, he figures out a way to ball Cher. That's pretty smart,
right? That's the kind of intelligence I wish I had. But that's a good point. Even he doesn't. I mean, I guess he watches CNN. I guess that's supposed to denote that he's an intellectual.
Yeah, no, like in some parts of the world, it's cool to know what's going on. Like,
yeah, it's very funny too that he makes fun of her for watching cartoons, and the cartoon they're watching is Ren and Stimpy. And I think she says it's very existential or something like that. And he goes, do you even know what you're saying? But like straight up, like Ren and Stimpy is higher brow stuff than the news.
Yeah.
Dead ass. It seems like something that he would watch and over intellectualize, which is but right, no, after, when he's, and it's this is I think a good line to encapsulate Cher's character. After he says, do you have any idea what you're talking about? She says, no, why? Do I sound like I do? Which, it is. I remember being. I remember,
question.
I remember being that age. I mean, I guess I still am sort of like this now, and maybe everyone is always, but that was definitely an age where one could be smart enough, and I fancy myself, an intellectual. One could be smart enough to sound like you know what you're talking about, with full knowledge that you have no, idea.
Yeah, let me tell you, young Arturo, the only thing that changes is that there's a higher price forever breaking and saying the Cher line. Do I sound like you increasingly are not allowed to break character like that? But yeah, everyone's still
until you become the president of the United States, then you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I like how Josh is going to wants to go into environmental law, which is like that seemed like a big thing in the 90s, environmental law.
Yeah, in How I Met Your Mother, Marshall, Jason Segel's character, I think he had expressed a desire to do environmental law. And he'd probably be around the age of of Josh in this movie. So I don't know what that generational cohort. Well, I do know it's because that was like a main lib signaling point. I don't think kids want to do environmental law anymore, mostly because they probably think the world's going to end in 10 years. But
There would be a great, I don't know if we could do an episode on this, granted, but like there would be a great episode of like things that libtards think are careers, who are like, 'cause they choose certain jobs for characters they want to show as virtuous, but like
Yeah.
because they're like writers, they have no idea what the fuck is going on, so they always choose this goofy shit. It's similar but not exactly the same to how like Hollywood makes a movie about eco terrorists every couple
Yeah.
years, because like libtards are like, if I was gonna kill for something, what would I kill for? But like there hasn't been an act of eco terrorism in the United States for like 70 years.
The other career is marine biology. That they give that one to women in movies. It's like, oh, she was going to be a marine biologist, or she wants to be a marine
yeah.
biologist.
And the funny thing is that when you do that, you create a generation of people who grow up saying, "I'm going to do that," and it's funny to see how quickly they peel off once they hit college.
Well, because if you actually do marine biology, it's like you're hanging out with people like James Cameron, who are like actually very intense and scary, and
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Screw
the
all
place
that.
I went to college actually has a really good marine biology program. And yeah, like in terms of the social makeup of the people who did that, it was exactly like any other STEM discipline. It was just a bunch of homework doing Asians.
yeah, I've met like in the Outer Banks, like the they're not forest rangers, park rangers or whatever, who are like they're like marine biologist washouts, because it's like, oh, this was actually science or something. So I guess I'm just a park ranger now. I thought it was just like going to be swimming a lot.
Yeah. And
Another, I guess, I don't know if you had something else you want to talk about. A transition is that there's also the environmental fair, which plays a plot role in that. It's what Miss Geist, the teacher, implores them to sign up for when they're trying to match her with the debate teacher as part of Cher's plot to give her a higher grade. And that seems like a very 90s thing too, the environmental fair.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
if I wanted to make an argument that America was already over when this movie came out, which is not the argument I want to make. I love this movie, but it did. The one moment that I was like a little downcast is that part of Cher's like growth is sort of like this NGO or charity agate prop. Like,
Yeah.
all you can do is like form a nonprofit organization and raise money. I mean, I guess it shows her doing like a little bit of organizing and getting cans and stuff. But it's like that does seem like a very to me like a very sterile vision of like how to get involved in your community. Granted, you already brought up It's a Wonderful Life. It's like if you track sort of like, I don't know, movie activism over time, it's like when that movie came out, it's like all these people at the savings and loan like actually putting their money together to do something, and then a half a century later you just have this like NGO memeplex where it's like we started an organization to help the Pismo Beach fire people, and there's 4 little tables with their different causes. It's like, okay, yeah, Putler send the bombs, but
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's talk about the rest of the cast before we go on any further. We got to talk about Stacey Dash.
I'm always up to talk about Stacey Dash. What particular facet?
Yeah, well, I can give some stuff here. There were like 3 Stacey Dash moments that were important in my growth into manhood. One was this movie. The second was she's in the All Falls Down video, from Kanye, and I really liked that song. And the video is just like her walking and looking really hot. And then I think a few years after the All Falls Down video, she had like I don't know, she was like outed as a conservative or something, and then maybe got in some legal troubles. So like it was just like every time Stacey Dash popped up in the culture, I liked her more and more.
Yeah, it was 2012. Apparently, she kind of she switched her affiliation to the Republican Party and she endorsed Romney. This is after voting for Obama in 2008. So I guess during those years she
One of us. One of us.
exactly.
No, but yeah, I guess it was just that, like, you know, it's very satisfying when your main relationship with like a public figure is just that you think they're hot, and then they, like, years later starts making insane political statements that lead to
Mm-hmm.
massive career blowback. Like, I find that particularly charming.
And is she still like on Fox News? She was for a while, right?
I think she's like, I mean, I'm sort of just speculating here, but like, I think she sort of became a crazy person at a time in American politics when that wasn't so welcome. And so I think she got phased out as, like, you know, someone who might be on red eye or whatever. But if she had just held her breath till the Trump era, she would have been the original you know, what is it, Diamond and Silk or whatever.
Yeah, 2017 she got fired from Fox.
Yeah, this says January 21st, 2017 itself, which, as we all remember, was Trump's inauguration. I guess she just missed the boat, but
Believe me, I combed through the J6 photos to see if I saw her. But
no, but she is like just distressingly beautiful, and in this movie, you know, she really does kind of perfectly embody the kind of airheaded, light-skinned friend archetype, which I don't even know if that's an archetype, but like it is solely on the basis of Stacey Dash in this film.
We're almost 30 years from the movie, and she looks almost exactly the same.
Yeah, really. You know.
yeah, and what's the name of her boyfriend? Either the actor or the character? Is it
Vizon or something?
Yeah, Donald Faison.
Donald Faison? Yeah, I think his performance is hilarious, and I think their sort of romance is very sweet.
Oh yeah, he's got the best line in the movie.
Which one?
I'm keeping it real.
But what's the character's name? How can I know? It's
Was it Desmond?
Murray.
Murray,
Which,
yeah.
Oh yeah,
which is,
very similar to Desmond.
which is a hilariously talented 10th name for him to be such a soi-disant thug.
Murray is not. Is there any other black people in the world named Murray?
As a first name, shit.
Yeah, I don't think so. Desmond would have made more sense. That's more of a black guy name.
But I do like it precisely, I guess, because it doesn't, it's not, because he's obviously, like, they're obviously rich kids, and they remind me of, although at the same time not very similar, they remind me of what are they from Daria, the black couple from Daria, Mac and what was her name? Whatever the black girl in Daria was named. She was like a type A nerd. They weren't really like them at all, but it was funny that this was, I guess, a time in the culture where, having exactly two black characters was a sufficient sop to diversity. And it's not like in this movie, it's not like they come off as not organic to the film. I think they are perfectly, like, black in the way that you would imagine, I guess, rich black kids would have been at this
No, and like
place.
it's such a high wire act to be like, this kid Murray is kind of like faking defunk, so to speak, but like, you're not supposed to be contemptuous of him. Like, he's still kind of cool and kind of funny. Like, I think that's really hard to sort of you simultaneously, like, show the audience what is ridiculous about all of these characters, but they're still, like, likable and maybe even respectable. Like, I don't think that's an easy thing to pull off, but like almost every character in this movie is like that.
Yes, Murray probably most spectacularly, like when he's like his line about how calling her woman is okay because it's the black vernacular or whatever. That really does completely reorient his character from just being like a wannabe thug to a wannabe thug who's smart enough to not do this. But
yeah,
like, charming for you to understand why.
I wish I had the quote, because it's clearly like from some real theory or something. He's like, wow, this urban vernacular does have certain pejorative connotations. It's not straight up misogynistic or something. He has like,
Yeah.
some weird hedge that's very funny.
I got the feeling when he's delivering the line that it's probably the first or fourth time he's ever said the word misogynistic.
Yeah, he says, okay, but street slang is an increasingly valid form of expression. Most of the feminine pronouns do have mocking, but not necessarily in misogynistic undertones, which also sounds exactly like the sort of like TI, what's the word that he says? It's just the kind of like black guy using a lot of big words and sounding smart, sort of cadence.
No, that probably was like literally in a Pitchfork review about how rap isn't sexist.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Ty says immediately after, she's like, wow, you guys talk like grown-ups. And Cher says, oh, well, this is a really good school.
They do talk in a very bizarre way. And it's actually kind of weird because Alicia Silverstone, I think she was actually 17 or 18 during the filming, and so was Brittany Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
But they still, even though they actually were kind of age accurate, they still do seem too old.
Yeah. It's hard not to.
They seem too old, but I think I'm so accustomed to like literally 40-year-old James Vanderbeek playing a teen that like it's less of a a reality shock than a lot of supposed teen stuff.
Yeah. Well, and one aspect of the language and the dialogue is it's not real, right? It doesn't really feel how anyone actually talks, but it's an interesting thing because it makes the movie feel a little bit more timeless. Like,
yes,
it could be, I mean, it's 90s. It's certainly 90s. It wears like the 90s stuff on the sleeve kind of, but at the same time it still works right now.
Yeah, I agree. Is that was that intentional? I don't remember. There's some movie where the slang was supposed to be outside of time precisely for that reason. I don't know if
I think that's a John Hughes thing, that he invented all his own slang so that in the future people wouldn't be like, oh, that's such a dated thing for a teenager.
Oh.
But I felt like in this movie, and again, I think this is a very like high level artistry thing. It's like you guys are totally right that they aren't talking like real teenagers, and yet something about it captured something real to me. Like sort of the emotions behind it or the subjects they're talking about did seem accurate to me. I mean, it's all like a little bit more intellectual and highbrow than maybe kids would be, but it still seemed to have like a certain realness to it.
Yeah. In 2017, sorry, I'm reading this now. Just Heckerling did an interview with someone for RogerEbert.com, Ebert's past, but some one of the people who writes there interviewed her, and apparently she compiled a dictionary of lingo from around the country, around the whatever sphere, and then she used that dictionary in the writing of the film. So she really went all out in I guess being a type A overachiever in creating it. And I think that speaks to how it does feel not inorganic or like not real, but at the same time reflective of something that is real.
Yeah. Are you saying Amy Heckerling has a bunch of highlighters in her? If you open her notebook, it's like 15
Absolutely.
colors.
Absolutely.
On the age thing, here's a quiz. How old do you guys think Stacey Dash was when this movie came out?
She
23?
seems older to me, maybe 25.
I said 23.
She was 28.
Shit.
Yeah.
I just looked at her Wikipedia page and I still missed that one.
Yeah, because I remember Stacey Dash is old. Like I actually remember, I think in the All Falls Down video, she was like already 40. And so it was like a big thing of like, man, this like, this hip hop honey is already old. And so now she must be like a retired person.
That is funny. And of course there's Paul Rudd, who's, the only person as ageless as Stacey Dash.
Yeah, those two. That's interesting. They're both in the movie. Yeah, so Paul Rudd. Well, let's do Brittany Murphy first. Brittany Murphy, if I'm being honest, is probably my least favorite part of the movie.
I agree.
I don't know if is that her her normal accent. Like, is that supposed to be Jersey or something? I mean,
I think she's
Italian. Okay, Long Island. And in real life, her real last name is actually something Italian, but yeah, I don't know. She doesn't quite work for me overall. I mean, she's okay, but not my favorite part of the
Yeah,
movie.
she works. It's just that I think, and this happens in a lot of movies. For me, if I'm being honest, the world that we're introduced to at the start is so like satisfying to watch that like as like the outside presence, even if she's necessary to give the film, to kind of get the plot going, it's still you want to spend more time with the other characters. Even I think she's all right. I agree with you that she's probably my least favorite part of the movie, just because every time she's talking, somebody else is not talking.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which I sent to you guys, is when Ty is just on the couch and her feet don't reach the floor and she's singing the Mentos song. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but I do think there's something a little disquieting about Brittany Murphy in that she always plays these sort of like troubled, drug interested women, and it just seems like that's what she was in real life. And so, I'm not totally familiar with the circumstances of her death, but she always plays these sort of like screwed up, high anxiety young women, and I think like knowing that that's sort of just what she is makes it like a little sad to see these performances. But I think she's doing a good job. Brittany Murphy, the actress, is doing a good job portraying this sort of wounded, needy character. Which, granted, like doing that makes it a little grating, but um,
No, I dig it for sure. I think that actually, to the film's credit, it manages to get that across without her story being like it's not actually depressing, or it's not like she seems like a pleasant burnout. You don't see kind of the seaminess that her and like the other stoners of the skull that it might actually contain. But it is kind of impossible to watch it without thinking of that facet of her life.
no, and I have sort of like a film question here, Granite, because I think Arturo, you're getting at this. Like one of the things that keeps this movie so enjoyable for me is that like it sets up conflicts and then just immediately resolves them. It's like Ty and Cher sort of get into a conflict, and then like I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 scenes later, they just like very sincerely apologize to each other and are friends again, and just Ty no longer is attracted to Josh for like reasons we don't fully understand. But like I feel like writers always feel like, oh, you have to dial the drama up to 11. So like if this movie was made today, I suspect that like, the Ty Cher conflict would be much more intense and or never resolved. But I think it works for the sort of general pleasantness of this movie that the characters just find ways through like being nice to sort of get themselves out of these conflicts like very quickly.
yeah. I think a normal, typically, the writing pattern I think you would normally see is that they wouldn't resolve the conflict maybe until pretty close to the end. They would have let it live a little longer and maybe introduced it earlier.
Yeah, and I think like Ty and Josh would actually have to kiss or something. Like it wouldn't just be, like the threat of them possibly liking each other. They'd have to act on it or something to keep the drama high.
Yeah, yeah. They could have been jeeping. They would
Is
have
that
need to have a jeeping scene.
is that something that's a good example of something that I kind of doubt anybody ever actually said, but it's
Yeah, I've never heard that otherwise. And that just means like hooking up in a car, right?
yeah, immediately after Murray says it, Dion's like, speaking of vehicular sex, which is a hilariously kind of
Yeah,
uh, high Lexile score way of putting it. She's like, I found this hair extension in your car, and it ain't mine. And then he of course he Darvos it. He's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But that's a good scene. That's a good piece of slang, and I think that is, I suppose it just means vehicular sex.
It's also like I don't think the movie is trying to do this. It's accidental. But like Cher's whole reaction to their fight is a very funny portrayal of like white indifference to black dysfunction, because she's sort of like, Cher is sort of implying she's like, I would never like fight in public with my man like that, but like that's just them. Like, oh well.
Let me see. I'm looking up.
She says, I think they've seen that Ike and Tina Turner movie just too many times.
yeah. That's
Which
another
is-
joke. I was like, ooh, spicy.
Which
Yeah.
is another way of reflecting not only that they're, I guess, black, but that they're not actually, they're kind of play acting at what they what we might call life ways of black dysfunction. Like they don't actually need to be like this. They could just be normal, but
Yeah, that's
They
the
had this-
forthcoming addendum to Albion Siege, right? The
The fifth folkway.
yeah, the fifth folkway. Maybe I'll be fifth folkway Groiper on.
Murray Groiper, Murray, whatever his last name is.
I'll pull it up. It's it just says Murray.
Murray's Jeep Groiper.
Yeah, I don't think they give him a last name.
Washington.
Oh, it is.
No, I was just, that was the joke about
Jackson. Yeah, okay.
Duval. Apparently, it's Murray Duval, according to Wikipedia.
And then there's this character Elton, played by Jeremy Sisto, who I know I've seen in other stuff, but he's not a well-known guy exactly, but I've seen him around.
He was in 6 Feet Under. He was the dysfunctional brother.
Yeah.
One of many dysfunctional brothers in 6 Feet Under.
So this is a continuation of my OJ observation, but I'm wondering. I get the sense that there's some intentionality here where they're like bottling up some of the like crime noir of early 90s Los Angeles, because he reminds me of a Menendez brother. And they're like, okay, well, we got to cast someone who looks like a Menendez to be like the bad guy.
I had never thought about that, but I can certainly see it.
This whole thing just to me has like echoes of OJ and Menendez brothers and probably some other early 90s LA drama.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. Just that entire we might call like proto Kardashian, like white ethnic undertones. I don't know, just like sexy kind of gorishness, which is, I think, what noir is always, that takes place in Los Angeles has always been. It's like a sunny place with these kind of brutal and shocking spasms of violence. And certainly, what one thing that you do not get any sort of like Rodney King, 92 riots, Koreatown, that sort of like valence of violence and dysfunction is not present in the movie at all. It's definitely a rich person's movie.
That would have been awesome. That would have been so bold if they had made some sort of like maybe there's a deleted scene where Cher is like, "Oh, can you smell that? It sounds like they're burning things down in the valley or something like that."
Murray getting beaten by cops and like being excited at being
Cher's dad is representing the 5 cops who beat up Rodney King.
Those are the forms or the files that they're highlighting or whatever.
My goodness, yeah, call logs between Mark Furman and Nazis or something.
Yeah, but I do agree with you that well, he does seem like a Menendez brother.
Yeah, and I think I'm probably like too heterosexual to see very deeply in it, but I feel like all the aesthetic choices in the movie seem very specific, and like probably there's a lot going on that's much deeper than I can perceive. It certainly looks really good, and it looks very much of the time. I'm sure all the clothes and outfits and stuff are very carefully chosen. I just have no sort of reference for that.
Yeah, I think with the wardrobe was a bit like the slang where they tried to. I mean, it was somewhat of the time, but it was also out of time. It was just sort of its own in movie universe styling.
Yeah, and I don't know if you wanted to talk specifically about Barbie, but it's like when you
Oh
see
yeah.
the trailers for Barbie, it's like the movie that comes closest to that aesthetic without being like otherworldly. It's probably either this, Clueless, or like Legally Blonde or something.
Yeah.
They both sort of prefigure Barbie, I think. I mean, obviously, none of us have seen Barbie yet, but the way that the trailer looks.
Yeah, the trailers appear to show, Barbie as like a very pleasant, hyper capable sort of, can do no wrong sort of figure, and not unlike Cher or the Legally Blonde Reese Witherspoon character.
Yeah, and I suspect Barbie is also an open borders race trader, but I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah. Um, we were talking about fashion a second ago, and there's the Christian character. His name Christian, not he doesn't play a Christian, but the closeted gay guy, or is he closeted or just not up front?
I think that's an interesting question because it's sort of like, certainly if he was walking around acting like that in 2023, you would not be able to call such a person closeted.
Yeah.
But at that time, I don't know how people would have characterized that.
Yeah, I was watching it with my mom. She's an Xer, and she was like, my brother is gay, and so he was in the room where we were watching some of the scenes with him, and she was like, he's gay? How can y'all tell? I mean, we both kind of looked at each other, and like, I mean, it's hard to, I guess, put into words. It's just something that seems obvious from the moment he goes to the screen. To me, anyway, I didn't know like that part of the movie, but the first time I watched it, I was like, it took me about a minute to realize that the twist was going to be that he was gay.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I have no recollection of being when I first saw it as a kid. It seems so obvious from like the moment he walks in the classroom. Like, oh, okay, he's supposed to be gay. All right, like
Right.
because he's got like that movement. He's got that thing in his step, and he's trying to dress like
Like someone from the 50s.
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando, yeah.
Yeah, young Brando or something. Although he doesn't like. I was kind of surprised by his casting because and maybe this is just maybe more of a '90s thing. They would have nowadays they'd get a character who like fills out the shirt better, who's got like a chest or something. But
Yeah, for a little more of a twist. It is funny that that's like the one guy in the movies that she's like, oh, like he's a man, not like these high school boys.
And
Maybe,
doesn't
I
that
guess
seem true to her character somehow? Like it worked for me.
Yeah, it made me think like, oh, I could have gotten her.
yeah,
Made me think I would have pulled Cher if that's her standard of masculinity.
well, also I don't want to be, how there's those posts on Twitter where it's like they're just engagement bait, but it's like extremely attractive woman, and they're like this was a 7 in the '90s or something.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but Alicia Silverstone, I don't like to get into this discourse, but I couldn't help but like noticing it during the movie. She does, in my opinion, is maybe a little overrated, or was overrated in the '90s. Like there was, I don't know. I mean, I'm like watching it. I'm like she's cute, but like I don't know. Like is she hottest girl in the school? Like I don't think so.
I feel like part of it is her, her swagger, the way she carries herself. Because I guess like looking at pictures of her, I can see that. She's not like a supermodel. But I mean, to me, I know she's 18, so I'm not, gonna be too weird. But I mean, to me, I was like, oh yeah, she's a dime. But I mean, I guess even for women, I guess part of it, like fashion and personality, maybe can play a large role. But I don't know. What do you think, Degree?
Without getting too deep into the various right wing stereotypes about what I'm attracted to, I think that what she's doing in this movie and generally is like a little bit orthogonal to like hotness, but it's attractive. Like I think there's an all-Americanness and a charmingness that I would not call sexy or hot necessarily, but is very attractive. Like overall, if that makes sense. Maybe similar to what Arturo is saying about swagger. Like I don't like choose scenes in this movie and think like, oh, this is the hottest woman I've ever seen. It's more like the way she's acting and conducting herself is extremely attractive and also feels a bit gone from the culture. So it's easy, or just less prevalent in the culture. So it's easy when, like, I think I even texted you guys like, man, there used to be women like this. And I did not mean there used to be women this beautiful. I sort of meant more like there were attractive women who would comport themselves in this extremely charming and feminine way that people don't really seem to do anymore.
That's
Yeah.
very, very well said. I can think of well, not getting too personal. I can think of one girl who I would say is like that, and I was very fond of her, and I think it is for that reason. It's like a competence and a sort of like being like a very, very, very skillful at like wanting to charm you without needing to be like a pick me or whatever. Like she just like naturally like wants to be charming, and there's a difference between like being charming and like it being obvious that like you enjoy the act of that sort of socialization. And I think considering we have a generation of like young people who are afraid to order pizza over the phone, I can see why that would be gone from the culture.
Yeah, she would this kind of personality must be like overwhelming to young people now. Like if a young would young people respond well to this sort of woman now?
I mean, maybe if they saw her on TikTok.
I think she'd be crushed out of existence. But like,
Yeah.
I think Arturo, almost what you're saying, I'm going to spurg out a little bit here, but it's almost like, the Amber character that you mentioned as sort of the antagonist. It's like, you can imagine that Amber character being like, like a homeless guy asking her for something and her sort of being like, you're not allowed to talk to me. Like, I'm hot. And like her being immediately concerned with like the status implications of that interaction, where like Cher would be, at least the Cher we're presented, would probably like smile and maybe even bat her eyes at the homeless guy. But if you called her on it, were you like flirting with the homeless guy? She'd sort of be like, no, like this is my posture towards the world. And I don't consider whether like giving it away like lowers me somehow. I don't feel that threat. I have enough that I can spread it around and I lose nothing. And like, it doesn't seem like anybody has that easy confidence or like magnanimity. There are people that do, but I'll just say that it seems like there used to be more such people.
Yeah, even when she gets robbed, you can kind of see some of that come out. And obviously, she's terrified and not exactly batting her eyes, but she still seems to have to comport herself in that way when she's like, you don't understand, this is an Elia, it's a totally important designer. That's, I guess you could say that's a joke about her being shallow or whatever, but I do also think that it kind of shows that she has such a warmth towards humanity that even having a gun at her head like can't rob her of that.
No, she like, I don't, you're right that part of that is her being a ditz, but like, yeah, she's really engaging with him. Like she's
presence of mind to actually like be like, you can just go, you can walk away, just don't make me get my dress dirty.
Yeah, and I will totally shoot you in the head. What a guy. A white robber, of course.
On the topic of her, I guess, other actresses. So they wanted her. They knew the director knew she wanted her to play the role from the beginning, but the studio made her also audition. Who was it? Reese Witherspoon, Kerry Russell, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Angelina Jolie.
Wow.
Yeah, I especially Reese, but I would say in general, maybe Angelina could have done it. But I'm struggling to see those actresses being likable in the way that, like, I think they all can be likable, but maybe I don't know if Reese Witherspoon can be likable, but most of them can be likable. But I don't know if they can in the extremely broad way that Silverstone can.
Reese in Legally Blonde is quite similar to. I think actually she almost does. It's almost to the detriment of that character. It seems like she really is doing Cher in a lot of ways. So I think she probably could have done the role pretty well. But there's just a little kind of intelligent. I mean, obviously it's the script. There's a little intelligence to what she does in this film that I don't know. Not that Reese is dumb, but just a little edge maybe that at least Silverstone has that Reese doesn't. I don't know. I think she was perfect for the.
I just think like even an ounce of Tracy Flick could kill this character. And like, I think Reese Witherspoon is a bit of a Tracy Flick, seemingly, and like brings that, because doesn't the Legally Blonde character? I'm struggling to remember the movie, but doesn't she bring that sort of like a little bit alienating efficacy to like her academic efforts, which is like not really a part of Cher?
I mean, she's such a sorority girl that, I mean, if anything, the fact that she's really smart just sort of almost just seems kind of tacked on to the character.
Okay.
Whereas I think to the credit of Cher and of Sylvester in this movie, her intelligence just seems to organically, without any sort of even effort, we might say, just flow from the way that she approaches the world. So yeah, I think she is actually, she is more type A, whereas kind of highlighter girl, whereas Cher is somebody who, I don't know, is planning her outfits on with like the little computer module girl, and I think those are slightly different types.
Yeah, I think with Witherspoon, it's more or less the same movie. Then Kerry Russell is a little too, maybe too, not, I don't want to say masculine, but a little too like, she's never seems very exuberant or whatever.
Yeah, I think she captures like sadness and melancholy really well. I can't think of a role she's played where like positivity is the overwhelming, vibe of the character.
Yeah. Kerry Russell is goated with the sauce when melancholy is the vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Paltrow is maybe a little too like, she's a little bit like too, I don't know, like museum or art gallery maybe.
Yeah.
And then I think Jolie's too like hot in the traditional sense of just like overwhelmingly attractive kind of person, especially back then.
Yeah, I don't think this character can have huge cans. It would get in the way of various things.
Yeah.
But yeah, Paltrow, there's something like patrician and aristocratic about Paltrow that would be alienating and couldn't make... Because Alicia Silverstone is like, she has a look where it's like simultaneously like, yes, this could be like a WASP or a JAP but like also someone could look like this in a trailer park, and both women would just be all American beauties. Whereas I think Gwyneth Paltrow, you're really like, yeah, some Saudi prince is gonna buy this woman and hang out with her on a lake. Like she's not gonna raise money for the people in Pismo Beach.
Very well said.
Yeah. And while I'm talking about alternative castings, Ben Affleck and Zach Braff both were up for the Josh role.
Affleck might have nailed it, but Rudd, it just has a little more soft edges to him, I think.
Yeah.
I think the Affleck parallel universe is really funny because Paul Rudd, in a way that like not that many handsome actor men can, I think he really pulls off in this movie that like, he's not really interested until or he doesn't realize he's falling for Cher until the pivotal moment where like, Affleck always has a twinkle in his eye where I think the movie would read like, oh, Josh is trying to fuck her the whole time.
Very true. Like the scene at the start where he's messing with her and where he like grabs her stomach, like they're two very attractive, like, young people. So it seems impossible that wouldn't have an obvious, like, kind of like sexual, not even subtext, but it does come off as like more sibling-ish, which does kind of make it weird. And I feel like we might as well talk about this now. Is it weird that they get together even though they're ex step siblings? Because
he's got his own dad, right? It's a different dad.
Yeah, no.
Like, yeah, I mean, so I'm not queasy about that sort of thing, but
also, like we are to believe that they basically met as. Like it seems somewhat recent, right? Like maybe they would have met at like 14 or something. Maybe it's been going on for a couple years, but not that they like grew up together.
And I think the parents were only married for like 6 months.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it said it was really short. I think it said somewhere like it was 6 months.
Yeah. Even in that case, it is. He's got that line. He's like, "You divorce wives, not children." So it is kind of admirable that, because they do walk that tightrope where it does, like the scene I just mentioned where he's like messing with her. It does seem like he has like a brotherly, because if you meeting a girl and you're both already teenagers and you're not related to her, you'd think that he would already have a kind of view her in an overtly sexual way. so they do walk it, but it does seem like he has like a brotherly relationship to her, until he doesn't. So I think they walk this tightrope nicely, where they do seem familial, but not too familial that it's weird.
That would be an unusual. It's quite unusual, I guess, how much the dad like still mentors this stepson that was only briefly under his care.
Well, maybe it's
Well,
just because he wants to go into law.
Do we
Yeah.
think that's all about to end? Like, one question I did find myself asking is, what is the dad going to think of this?
I mean, he seems to, if he likes him, I imagine he'd rather have him than someone else balling his daughter. But
Well, on my rewatch, I was actually not able to watch the last 5 minutes. Is there any indication of the dad like being aware or any expression or anything of them?
No, but Cher and Josh do attend the wedding of the two teachers that Cher sets up, like, as a couple. So the dad isn't there, but it sort of implies like they're out and this is not received as weird by the community. I mean, I think step sibling stuff, it doesn't register for me as problematic. Like, I'm always, I guess the reason some people think it is because if you really were in the same home since you were like 2, then maybe people are creeped out by the idea of like a couple that grew up together. But yeah,
I mean, the people at Pornhub.com have tried their best to make it both normalized and totally disgusting. But I don't. Sorry, go.
Yeah. We don't get too much into that, but I am curious. Like, why is that? That's like a new thing, right? Why is that so popular?
I mean, it seems to me literally like that just is something that started being promoted on that website and other ones like it, and it kind of, in the way of a sexual fetish, kind of builds on itself in the mind of the user or the public. It literally just seems to be something that like was forced and memed into existence, unfortunately.
No, see, I disagree. I think there is a sick. I mean, listen, I don't want to say that our capitalist overlords never meme us into further degeneracy, but I interpret like all the like stepmom and step sibling stuff as like, actually there is like a latent market for incest content at all times.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You can't just straight up do it. So what the porn companies do is they introduce these weird like legal fictions, but so that people who actually just want to fuck their real sister can watch this porn and pretend that's sort of my assumption of.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I definitely think that there's a real urge there, but I mean, I guess just like the recent sort of overt popularization of it, I don't think is like I don't think it comes from an organic collective realization that actually our step siblings are really fucking hot.
Clueless walked so Pornhub could run.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do think is weird is I kind of feel like it is a little. I still like the movie. I still think it's a classic and honestly almost a flawless movie, but I do think it's a little rushed how suddenly in like the last few minutes of the film they realize, it's like, oh wait, we actually have feelings for each other. You know what I mean? Like literally, like almost the very last scene. Here's the script. I guess he's saying to her, you're gorgeous, right, and popular, and but this isn't why I come here. I don't come here for you. Mel, I want to help out Mel. He's the only one who cares about me. And she says, that's not true. He's like, he's not. Are you saying you care about me? And then they kiss.
Yeah. Again, going back to the lack of need in this script to build up drama. It seems like in almost every other version of this story in movies, first one of them would kiss the other one and be rebuffed. And there would be a period of like, we can't do this. We're step siblings, and then
forbidden love.
Yeah,
that is a necessary volta in I think most of the X-rated versions of this story. That like, oh, we can't, but they don't. To their credit, they don't seem to be concerned about that once it's out in the open.
In regards to it being rushed, the movie does move along, I think, quite fast, and there are parts that are a little bit clunkier than others, but those 90s 90s comedies were like very they were very like religious about like that 90 minutes. Like they didn't really go past that. Maybe they'd go up to an hour 40 or something, but not much more.
Yeah, I like that rule. It really moves.
Yeah, it's sometimes constraints, limits. They're good. They foster creativity. You don't need a 2 hour and 40 minute Clueless. As much as I love the movie, it doesn't need to be like a you know Avengers Endgame length story.
Yeah, I've watched like some rom coms on Netflix. I mean, for all of the, a lot of the sort of stuff that used to be theater fare, mid budget action and like and lower budget like rom coms and comedies. Netflix does actually sort of make some of that stuff. It's generally not very good, but they do at least put some out. But the rom coms are often like 2 hours and 10 or something like that. And it's like that's just way too long for this sort of thing usually.
I one thing I think is funny is that the kind of the inciting incident that ends with them kissing is when she like screws up the files and the other lawyer gets mad and he's like, this wouldn't have happened if you weren't playing footsie with the dumb kid, and then he's like, what are you talking about, bro? And the lawyer gets mad and leaves, and then they end up kissing. I related with the lawyer. I was like, I would have been pissed if I got, if my job was made harder because Cher was obviously there because there was sexual chemistry between them.
But isn't that guy Mel's employee?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, Mel's the boss, and he's just trying to do his job, and then
Yeah, I would never go off on my boss's princess daughter though.
No, it was a bad. He shouldn't have done that. But I'm just saying, I relate to his frustration.
Yeah.
Arturo, was it clear to you, given your extensive legal training, what she actually did wrong?
I'm reading that script right now, trying to figure that out.
She didn't collate the files or something like that. Like,
She says,
she split it in two, but like,
Yeah.
shouldn't she have page numbers? Like, can't you just?
Yeah, no. You think that they should all be numbered, ordered. Maybe they didn't do that yet. It's just, I think it's just supposed to sound legalish. It doesn't. Yeah, I'm still honestly like, I don't understand why dividing them into two piles screwed everything up, but whatever. The important thing is, now it's going to take him forever to figure out which parts are what Mark Furman said.
well, the lawyer just leaves and he says he's calling in sick, which I don't think you get to do when you're.
I'll try it next time. Maybe tomorrow I'll be like, hey, listen, I'm calling in sick. Cher Horowitz messed up the files.
Yeah, but you're supposed to go before the judge. Too bad.
I have actually had it happen at work where something went terribly wrong late in the day so that it was clear we were all going to have a terrible day the next day. And then one of the principal people involved in the screw up called in sick. And it's one of the most mad I've ever been.
Goals. What let's talk about Josh reading Nietzsche. I think that should be a fecund.
Yeah, you guys couldn't figure out which book it was, right? It's like a generic, just.
I finally found it. Yeah, it's like the Nietzsche Reader. So it's either like an explanatory text or passages or something.
I think it is. I have a reader that is. It's not that one, but it's it's got like a few of the major texts and then random aphorisms from other books. It's the Walter Kaufman reader, so it's kind of libtarded, but I'm sure maybe his is a more maybe he's reading the Alan Bloom Nietzsche. I don't know.
Well, does this movie think Nietzsche is libtard coded? Because like everything else they tell us about Josh is that he's a libtard.
Well, I mean, if as people might glean from listening to our Closing of the American Mind podcast, as Bloom says, at this time period, Nietzsche was more of a left guy. His because of, I guess, where the culture was at, that they did claim him at the time. So I think that, I mean, he's probably more so just supposed to represent, being an aloof male intellectual. But see, all those guys, were libtards at the time.
Well, yeah, what it reminds me and gives me the rare opportunity to actually say, man, things are better now, is like there was a whole 20 plus year period where just, if you were a thoughtful person, that was left-wing coded, like full stop. Like if you liked ideas, if you liked books, all that meant you were probably, pretty progressive.
Yeah. Nowadays he would have been reading Bronze Age Mindset for sure.
Nowadays he'd be reading Ta-Nehisi Coates.
I'm saying he's our guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to
But-
remake this movie where Cher goes in and she's like, "Dad, who is this fucking incel by the pool?"
Right? Wearing a Millions Must Die shirt. I'm thinking of going into civil rights law with a fellowship with Richard Hanania's think tank.
Yeah, we should just cast Hanania as the new Josh.
The real white ethnic Clueless.
At one part, she talks about Marky Mark planting a tree for charity or something, but wasn't Marky Mark like beating up Vietnamese guys at this point in time?
Yeah, but there was still sort of, I feel like in the 90s, there was still like an effective omerta in pop culture on like bringing up.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Like there was a long period of time where like some of these stories were out, but they were not. This is my memory anyway, that like they were not the primary thing associated with the public's consciousness of that figure.
Yeah, and more to the point, I mean, he was that had happened. I mean, didn't that happen?
It was actually in the 80s, I think.
Yeah, before he was famous. Yeah, I think this would have been like the period of time where it would have been least likely for.
I just thought it was funny to like evoke his name as like a charity guy or something.
Yeah, because even that specific incident aside, he is a bit of a brusque, not the thoughtful intellectual man's celebrity.
Another reference where she when she's realizing she likes Josh, she says, "So he's kind of a Baldwin," and that was really funny to me. I had to I immediately assumed, oh, okay, the Baldwins were so high status back then that it would be a great compliment to be a Baldwin.
Mm-hmm.
But I Googled it just to make sure, because I'm like, is that really what she means?
I think this was actually, maybe there was like a 2-year period on each side of this movie, which was the only period in American history where all the Baldwins were attractive. Because I think almost immediately after 2001, like one of them got really fat. And I think Steven is like particularly crazy eyed in a way that I think would not be necessarily considered attractive. But yeah, I think at that time they were all just like handsome brunette men. So that's how extremely handsome brunette men. So that's how I interpreted that reference.
Two lines that I think will play differently now, or at least one of them does, is first when Ty says, "You guys have never had straight friends before." Like, obviously that she does. I believe she does not mean that she's never had heterosexual friends, but I think that if you were like 18 or years old and you watched this movie, you would assume that that's what she meant. Right.
Yeah, she means just don't do drugs, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like when I was like younger and I saw like a GIF of that on Tumblr or whatever, like that's what I assumed she meant. And on this watch, I finally realized, wait a minute, that's obviously not what she means, considering that it was the 90s.
Yeah, degree studies and I came up in the era of straight edge, so
yeah.
So
I put X's on my hands at some punk shows when I was like 12. I was like, yeah, don't hand the crack pipe to me, man.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about
Wait.
Sorry, go. Yeah.
The other line is when she says, "You're a virgin who can't drive." I feel like every teenager now is a virgin who can't drive, so that doesn't seem like
Yeah, every 30-year-old now is a virgin.
That's like a mark of status now.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys, what are we to make of that? Cher and Dion don't do drugs and haven't had sex. Like, is this?
Well, she says like her virginity went from technically to definitely not, or something like that.
Yeah, like after Murray helps her with the stressful driving situation.
Good for Murray.
Aren't they like they're like 15? They're supposed to be 15, I think, or 15, like because they're getting their licenses. So they're 15 and 16. So. I mean, Stacey Dash is 28, but she's playing a 15 going on 16-year-old.
I just thought it was sort of interesting that it's like still in 95. It was like I don't know. I overinterpret everything, but it seemed to me like, to quote Norm Macdonald, it's like the Stygian afterglow of Christianity that like
yes.
a totally secular movie felt comfortable being like, part of what's high status about these women is that like they know their value and they're not getting fucked up and letting boys have sex with them. And like the movie's not going to explore why that's good or like why that, it's not going to provide any content that would allow you to make an argument for that in culture, but it's just going to sort of insist that, like, yes, because these girls fundamentally have their heads on straight, they don't do drugs and they don't have a lot of
Yes.
sex. And
Because there's a scene where Cher's like, "Don't sell yourself short now," to Ty, referring to how like she's like the new girl now at school. You've got something going for you that no one in this school has. And Ty says, "Oh, I'm not a virgin." So that's Ty is really like normal. Maybe we might say a pro view of it is that everybody in school has had sex, but to Cher, that Cher hasn't had sex. So it's not just that she hasn't, but it's that, like, maybe most people would just assume everybody else had also had sex. One thing that I was asking Degree was there's the scene where they're in the car where with Josh and I guess his girlfriend from school or whatever, and they're having some pretentious conversation, and they're talking about somebody. I don't know who. It's like I think it's it's the scene where she corrects the girl on the quote was actually Polonius, not Hamlet, and she knows it because of Mel Gibson. The girlfriend's talking about like he's taken our minds to the most fecund point and restrained them before they've wandered to the garden of ideas. And I was wondering who she was talking about, if it was like a philosopher or something.
Oh, did she say he? I thought I heard she, and I was going to joke that it was Camille Paglia, but it's not.
I think it is a he. Degree had told me he thought maybe because they were talking about form that it was Plato. The girl totally what she says is she says the man is ridiculous. He doesn't have one unique thought in his little puny brain.
Oh, that's
and then
right,
Josh says, I think there's some merit in learning form straight off. Then she says the thing I just said about that, and then the girl says it's like just like Hamlet says, "They don't self be true," and Cher corrects the pretentious girl and says it's actually Polonius. And so I was wondering, like, I wonder if it was just if they were supposed to be talking with someone specific or maybe like a teacher or something. I don't know, but
yeah, I think your guess that it was a professor makes sense. My get though, you rereading it actually makes no sense that it would be because like you don't like learn Platonic forms like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but her line there is so ridiculous and over the top. I was wondering if it was like from something else, but it's original.
Yeah, it's a perfect representation of that kind of person and what they would sound like.
Did you guys catch the I'm having a Twin Peaks experience line?
Yes.
And I was wondering about that. I mean, Twin Peaks actually was kind of a hit, I think, like 3 or 4 years before this movie,
Mm-hmm.
But I was wondering if that was a reference that a lot of people would actually get, because I don't know.
That's a good question, actually, considering. I feel like it would have been just because at the time, if something
so was recent, I guess.
And there were only so many TV shows, only so many networks. Even if it seems to us like now it must have been a relatively sequestered from normies experience. I really don't think it was the timing. It might have been Lynch, but it was on ABC.
Yeah,
but also like, and we were sort of saying this up top, like this is the kind of movie that endeavors to be cool by maybe like making the mainstream audience strain to fully understand all the references. So like
I know my sisters and their friends all liked it, but they did not get that. I know they didn't get that reference.
Yeah. These like various things like Cher says at one point she's like one of those Botticelli chicks, and yeah, that's for instance that is a perfect example of something. I don't think it's not like Botticelli is obscure. He's one of the most famous artists in the history of the world, but still, that's something that might make a normie audience, do whatever it is they did before Googling.
So the irony, granted, is, I called this a silly girly movie, or that was my impression, but you're sort of saying that, the experience of some women seeing this film is much like their experience of men in general, which is like, I sort of enjoyed it, but I didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's funny references all through. I mean, like the gay guy is driving a Nash Metropolitan. Like, it's like kind of like a noted. I guess it's from my Googling. It's kind of a noted gay car, but like not like who's gonna know that?
Yeah.
Gay people have cars. This is terrible
the 54 Nash Metropolitan.
But yeah, his like again, knowing none of this stuff, I could just tell that like Christian's clothes in particular seemed like they had been very exactingly selected.
Yeah, and that scene where she's trying to seduce him is hilarious. Just the total focus he has on the TV.
Yeah, do you
Yeah.
guys have an opinion on why he doesn't just tell her he's gay? I mean, I guess this is similar to the closeted question. Maybe he doesn't want to be out, but I thought that was a little odd.
Yeah, he makes up an excuse about his like upset stomach or something, and like, I get him. He must just be closeted. I guess I don't know, like, because
Yeah, I think- Murray
Takes a-
Murray is not fooled.
Oh yeah. Tell us the Murray line. That's like
Yeah.
the best line
What?
of the movie.
What? Yo, look, are you bitches blind or something? Yo, man, Christian is a cake boy. A what? He's a disco dancing, Oscar Wilde reading, Streisand ticket holding friend of Dorothy. He's gay. First of all, like Murray saying that is a little sus. I'm not gonna lie, but it's certainly not. It's certainly not thugged out to even know the phrase "friend of Dorothy."
Yeah, and Oscar Wilde. I mean, that's like, more. There was more. It was a more literate society 30 years ago, but still, I think, like I say, my sisters and their friends, they didn't get that reference.
No.
I meant to open the show actually by asking if you guys were cake boys.
No.
Well, okay, so I have a question. I have an etymological question here because recently, and Arturo is sort of like a hip hop guy. Like, does cake in the phrase "cake boy" refer to ass? Because like now, people will talk about a girl being
up,
like double caked up or whatever. So I didn't know, like, is this a phrase that has deep origins in rap and has come back around, or are these like two different usages?
Okay, so Sir Mix-a-Lot has a song called "Cake Boy," but apparently it means a metrosexual, according to Urban Dictionary. It was early 90s slang. And according to another Urban Dictionary entry from 2006, a cake boy is someone light and fluffy, effeminate, not where it's at, not meaty in the slightest sense of the word. The opposite of a cake boy being a meat boy. So I don't know if that one has twice as many thumbs down as thumbs up, so I have no idea if it's true, but I don't think cake means ass, or that's not how I would read it.
Okay.
I'm definitely a meat boy. Yeah, I would have assumed cake meaning. I mean, the way I've heard like fruit. To say someone's fruity or something, like it's colorful and it's delicate or something.
Yeah,
Like,
I could definitely see that the cake. There are certain other vulgar terms regarding the nether regions that is evocative of. So it could go either way.
There's a part, and I'm just going like random mode here, but there's when she says she tells the cleaning lady I don't speak Mexican, and she gets offended, and then Josh is like, she's from El Salvador, and I like that part because libs still do this, but they used to do it more. I think they loved like knowing those little distinctions, between like Mexico and Guatemala or something. And they would always be very proud of themselves for like pointing that out.
Yeah.
Right, and I think this movie doesn't really hint at it, but one of the things you learn if you dive even like deeper into these regions and stuff is that often the libs interpret it as like, oh, she's offended because she really loves like her Salvadorian identity and I confused it with Mexican. But usually it's just because these regional peoples fucking hate each other.
Right.
So it's like, you think I'm fucking Mexican? Like, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
I thought the casting of the maid and her acting was extremely enjoyable.
I bet she's played that role at other places.
Right. Great.
Paul Rudd's always eating, like in every scene he's like eating something, and it's always like branded food or boxed food or something like that, except for his sandwich. I don't know if you guys noticed the sandwich he made, but
I didn't. What is it?
well, it's like one piece of turkey, and then he puts like mayo straight on the turkey, not on the bread. It just
Are you saying Josh is a cake boy?
He's not a meat boy, that's for sure.
One thing he's eating, you said that all the food that he eats like is very distinctly branded. I guess this was before no logo, but after
Well,
that,
they hide some of the brands, but it's just he's always eating like grocery store boxed food, other than the sandwich.
I guess he hadn't moved to like an anarchist commune and gone zero waste and only eaten food that he grew himself. But that seems like something that he would do. So that's interesting.
But he's like eating in every scene almost, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in half or more. But
Hungry boy.
yeah. Oh, got to touch on the music, the soundtrack. I'm a Radiohead fan. There's 2 Radiohead songs in this movie, and like I don't know.
What's the other one? There's fake
So-
plastic trees and
There's Fake Plastic Trees, and then there's My Iron Lung, which plays. It's they actually comment on it. It's like in the movie. It's they like say like what's with college music being depressing or something like that.
the modern
And-
music of the university station.
Yeah, and but that My Iron Lung doesn't make the soundtrack. Like it's not like credited as the soundtrack. Just the Fake Plastic Trees.
It's a shame.
But there's good songs. The soundtrack in general is quite a few good songs.
No, I agree. It starts off like perfectly with Kids in America.
Yeah,
It's
got Supergrass, Counting Crows, Mott the Hoople, or at least a cover of Mott the Hoople.
there's
So-
when they sing "Rollin' with My Homies" and then Ty is like, "That was our song."
yeah,
Nailed it. And I think it plays one more time after that. Oh yeah, she burns the fucking she burns the cassette tape.
she wants to. Cher doesn't let her
Oh yeah,
because it's
But-
like a gas fire in a residential home. Like you can't just throw a tape in there.
their relationship really is perfect. Cher and Ty is that kind of, lower upper without her being too condescending, but I think there's like a level of patronizing that she has to be in which as good right wingers I think we acknowledge is a beneficial relationship for the both of them in their hierarchy between them.
Well, no, it's so great. Like, I can see how from a certain perspective, it's like it could be considered bad writing to not heighten this stuff to its most extreme point. But I love how you watch Cher watch Ty become full of herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she's sort of like, oh, I've created a monster. Like this person I built to be my sidekick is now kind of feeling herself and getting a bit out of control. But like, they don't have a confrontation about, just sort of Cher stews on those feelings and they have a little conflict and then they apologize. But again, it's not like they don't have like a big blow up where she's like, I made you, which is sort of that type of thing is like the center of Mean Girls or whatever. But yeah, and another one is the teachers that get married. Like it's a total manipulation by Cher. And because I couldn't remember the plot of the movie, I was like, oh, when is this going to blow back on her? Like, when are they going to figure out the letter is fake and be like, you have no right interfering with our love life? And like, it never happens. They just fall in love. Like it all works out perfectly.
Yeah, some people need to be manipulated.
That's true. Cher's will to power is really shown.
Yeah, the
in this film.
Goyim. We call those people the Goyim.
No, it's good. She's a real new Chan. God, the scene where she finally realizes that she likes Josh and she's trying to watch the news with him. He's like, you haven't made me watch the real world. And then she says, I care about the news. And he's like, since when? Since now. And the TV's showing something happening in Bosnia. And he's like, you look confused. And she's like, wait, I thought they declared peace in the Middle East. just a perfect level of just like her knowing that dimly that there's something going on, that there is something called, a lack of peace in the Middle East, but not actually knowing anything else. It's just perfect.
Did you guys ever see the TV show that they based on that came from this?
I
Never
don't
did see
think
it.
so.
It has most of the cast, and they ran 3 seasons, 62 episodes.
That's impressive, honestly.
Yeah, they have. I don't think they don't have Silverstone or Murphy. I don't think, but they have like Stacey Dash, Donald Faison, no Paul Rudd. But they get almost all the people.
Who plays Cher?
I'm looking it up now. It's
Rachel Blanchard is her name.
and I watched like some clips from it. she took a lot of heat for like not being good or whatever. But I think, but I think she was actually
I
she,
often take heat for that. It was a common
yeah.
problem.
But I think she was actually okay. It was just a lower effort product
Yeah,
overall.
I mean, how could you couldn't do it the same? But I imagine she did a serviceable job, and the outfit probably does a lot of the heavy lifting. Just looking at
Does
the
it
promo pictures.
does it pick up where the movie left off, or does it sort of redo that plot, or how does that work?
Good question. I don't know.
The first episode is Cher takes over as Miss Buzzline, the school's newspaper advice column, but her bad advice causes trouble with her friends. See, that sounds like more of the relationship with conflict which you would expect the movie to have, and which naturally you would see in a sitcom.
I totally recognize this Blanchard lady, but her IMDb known for section, you know how they have those top 4? It's pretty weak. It's like a Netflix show, TV adaptation of Fargo, Peep Show, and
That was
Flight of the Conchords, 2 episodes.
that was a good show, the Fargo adaptation. But I don't know. I'm assuming it wasn't a big role.
No, I mean it's like, but I totally know this lady. I'm just surprised. I'm surprised she hasn't-
She's on Peep Show with
Yeah.
her Heather Graham looking ass. She's really funny on Peep Show.
I believe it. Being a Canadian, naturally, she was on Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, Are You Afraid of the Dark was you were not too young for that? That was like my era.
No, I was, but afraid of it. In the same way that I
Alright.
can talk about, Bill Clinton and his
The
affairs. I don't know.
Peloponnesian War.
Yes, it's all the same to me if it was before 2000.
Oh, I mean, earlier in the beginning, we were talking about where was it actually filmed. A lot of the school stuff is at Occidental College or University, whatever it's called, where famously Obama attended.
Yeah, wow. He might have been there at the time. No, he's a little older than that.
It's like he was
Do we
he
think
left
he
in
inspired the Murray character.
Definitely.
It sort of sounds familiar to that all part from his biography about adopting different theory to try and get laid. That's some
Yeah.
real Murray shit.
Right.
the part of Dreams of My Father where he's just keeping it real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm like all out of stuff other than they. Okay, there's the cell phone joke where they all answer their phones at the same time. Was that like the first time that was done?
I don't know. Could be. I was happy to see those big ones where you pull out the rabbit ear. I love that.
Yeah, because shows still do that joke, but it's just a joke about over connected tech people instead of in Clueless. It's like more of a rich joke.
Yeah, and there
Yeah.
were a couple years where like a big source of humor was like what a character's ringtone was.
Yeah.
Ringtones. One last thing I did want to mention is maybe, or you would expect this perhaps from the milieu of the characters, but it is amazing to see a California, Los Angeles movie where there's almost no Asians and no Mexicans. There's the one Asian girl in their friend group, right?
Yeah.
But it is very white and black in a way that if you did a remake, there might be like one white Gentile in the entire thing.
Yeah, they also go. There's like 2 R words, maybe, or there's 1 R word, and then Brittany Murphy says, "I was such a tard" or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kind of easy way that she says it. She's like, "Oh, I'm such a retard." I packed the dad's coffee wrong this morning. It's so funny.
Yeah.
The teacher,
What
of
a
course,
delight! It's really maybe the Germans have it, but we need like a special word for the joy you feel when you watch something more than 20 years old and hear an F slur or an R slur dropped really casually within the first few minutes. You just know you're in for a rollicking good time.
Oh, wait, 2 more things. There's first of all, it's delightful to see Cher adopt like kind of the lawyerliness of her father and like trying to debate her grades up, or when she's like, "I object. Do you recall the dates of these alleged tardies?" I think that is a good kind of demonstration of how she's shallow but not stupid. then there's also Travis. The character of Travis is pretty funny. When he gives the speech after he gets his tardies, he's like, "I'd like to thank my parents for never giving me a ride to school, the LA City bus driver for taking a chance on an unknown kid, and last but not least, the wonderful crew at McDonald's for spending hours making these egg cooked muffins that wish I might never be tardy." It's just it is funny how the other characters, like smaller characters, have some really good lines, or just get to show off their unconventional intelligences, we might say.
Yeah, I just stumbled on the IMDb trivia section. There's actually some good stuff in here, but I'll just read the top one, which is that Silverstone actually did not know how to say Haitian. That was how she thought it was said, and the director said nobody don't correct her, just let her go.
Amazing. That's a real director right there.
That's so good. In my heart, I believe that Alicia Silverstone knew what she was doing and just understood the character to her core. But we'll never know.
We'll never know. Oh, telling the PE teacher an evil male broke her heart, so she raised her C to a B. And the teacher's like, "They're slime, they're horrible. Don't feel bad. No, you'll see, they're all like this." I can't remember if she was supposed to come off like a lesbian or just like a rad femme type, but either way, it's a great little bit.
The gym teacher, they even use the term like she's same-sex attracted or something.
Yes, they did. Didn't
it's
they?
A funny term.
Seemed to be same-sex oriented.
Yeah.
In the grand tradition of PE teachers. That is a Steve Saylor observation right there. Literally. Great. The last HBD movie.
Okay, you guys got anything else? This is a great analysis and review of Clueless.
Longer than the movie itself, which is how you know we went deep.
Yeah, I think we uncovered important ground. The Clueless community is going to be pretty grateful, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I feel like we can expect at least one tweet from the usual suspects on Twitter being like, "Ugh, here's your so-called right wing saying a Valley Girl movie is great."
If we don't get that, we'll have failed.
This is a lot better than the movie Valley Girl starring Nicolas Cage.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen that?
I don't think so.
I have. It's there's better cinema.
I didn't like it very much, and it portrays an almost like amoral teenager group in Los Angeles. It's very weird. I found it very weird.
Probably in the kind of the midpoint between this film and Kids.
Yeah.
Now that's a film. That's a right-wing film.
Anyway, go rewatch Clueless, guys.
Yeah, it's great.
I might watch it again after this.
Yeah, fifth Folkway Groiper signing off.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. Go listen to their episode, Degree Studies, and Arturo's episode on Alan Bloom. I learned a lot. You will too. Very cool. Yeah, I'll put a link in there. Talk to you guys later.
All right, thanks,
Peace and
Brent.
love.